welcome back, guys. We appreciate you guys tuning into our little episode today where we have a little chat with Col Segars.
All right.
I appreciate your time, sir. I know it's a busy week for you and
It is.
everything that's going on here pretty soon for you and the transition that's going on. So, but the fact that you're taking time to talk to us is really meaningful, and I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you doing this.
So, first things first, let's get into who Col Segars is. Like, where did you start at?
Okay.
Where'd you come from? But
Where'd it come
know.
from? Yeah. So, Thomas Segars is a son of a military man himself. My dad was a security police enlisted airman. He retired in 1985 after 23 years of military service. So I was born in Seymour Johnson, North Carolina, and then I went overseas for the next 15 years of my life. And grew up there while he was serving in various capacities. And then when he retired in 85, we moved back to North Georgia, Hiawassee, Georgia. And I completed 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th grades there. And I just I needed something else. It was a very small town, beautiful countryside, beautiful mountains, but I needed something else. And so I joined the military and enlisted right away from basic training. And then I went to my first base, which was Aviano Air Base in Italy, which was absolutely amazing. Did about 3 years there. Then I went to McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas, and did about 3 years there. And all that time I was doing night school and trying to just get a degree until I figured out that I wanted to commission. So after the end of '96, I got out under the Professional Officer Corps Early Release Program. It was one of the Air Force programs that they had at the time. And I went to the University of Georgia, finished up 2 years of college there after I transferred all my previous credits, and I came back in as a commissioned officer in 1998.
So real quick though, I have to ask, as being a cop and knowing the history, did you come around the time when the 38s were still?
I did not. I was on the tail end of the 38s and the old greens.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm not that old.
Well, so back to the commissioning. What drove you to want to get a commission?
Yeah, so Aviano for me as I was a 6-year enlistee, so a 6-year wonder. Aviano was a great assignment, but I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Like probably most young airmen in our community, in our Air Force, you come in, you're looking for something, and it takes a while to figure out what you want. And so for me, the experiences I had interacting with some, we called them buck sergeants at the time. They were senior airmen with a blue star, which means they had went to a non-commissioned officer academy. And they just weren't, I didn't feel like they were really there for me. You know, they were there for the power, the authority, and it was always about pushing the airmen around and stuff like that. And so for me, I think that's really what kind of pushed me on the path to do something different. And so for me, it was going to night school. You know, while my flight mates wanted to go to play softball tournaments or go do bowling, I was one of the very few that volunteered to go to night school. And I had some phenomenal senior non-commissioned officers who supported me. I would go to the armory, grab my gun, go to guard mount, go to post, and when it was time to go to school, we would get relieved of duty, go turn our weapon in, go to school for 2 hours, whatever it was, come back, get your weapon, and go back to post and finish out your tour. So I had some great senior NCOs that pushed me in that direction.
Was there any kind of motivation as far as, like, I understand the personal drive too, but was there anything from the work aspect that drove you for getting the commission?
Yeah, I think at an early age, you know, I just wanted to positively impact airmen, and as a young senior airman, and then I made staff sergeant. I realized that my locus of control was awesome because I had, you know, my circle of influence with my airmen, but it didn't extend beyond that very far. And so I wanted to be able to get into a position where I was able to positively influence airmen, and so I chose the commissioning route.
Is there any particular degree path that you chose?
No. So based on all of my night school stuff, it was more towards a criminal justice degree, and so when I went to University of Georgia, it was the criminal justice track.
Okay. Has that helped you out along the way?
It has. I mean, basically what we do, depending on what location you're at, you could be doing straight up security or majority law enforcement, so it has.
Okay, awesome. So now that we understand a little bit about who you are, let's jump into a little bit more of a harder question.
Okay.
So there's chaos everywhere, right? Pretty much chaos, no matter what scope you're in, whether you're looking at the really narrow target right in front of you, or if you're trying to forecast far in advance, there's chaos everywhere.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
I mean, that's a good question. I think you have to first analyze what the chaos is. Like, what is it that's going on around you? And I learned at a young age to surround yourself with smart people. And so through your analysis of those individuals, you kind of know what their strong points are, what their weak points are, and you collectively have this body of people that can come together and help you work through. We call it organized chaos because in a military organization, it's still organized, though it can be fairly chaotic at times depending on what you're dealing with. But surrounding yourself with smart people, thinking through the problem set and maybe what that end state or that perpetual state needs to look like, and then just taking small bites of it. It's really hard to get after something in one fell swoop, but getting those small bites and really attacking those things, and probably the closest alligator to the boat theory is what we found works best.
So in that chaos, as you're working through the problems, I'm supposing that there's decision points that you have to make through it, right?
Potentially. Depends on what the situation is, like anything else. But definitely you could have some waypoints and decision points where you need to come back together, because a big part of working through the organized chaos is coming back to make sure that you aren't missing something or you're not going down the wrong path, right? You don't want to get all the way down, 3/4 down that path, and discover that you're going down the wrong path, attacking the wrong problem set. So coming back and really doing that feedback to say, how are we doing? What are we missing? Are we still on track? Let's continue.
And what are some factors that you give, like, for how you make a decision? Do you think about, the effects of the decision before you actually make it? What's the process that you use when you make a decision?
I tend to try to think through the problem set and then beyond, because oftentimes with any decision, there's second and third order effects. Sometimes people are happy with those second, third order effects, but at the same time, not everybody is. So where you have a happy population, you'll likely have an unhappy population. So kind of thinking through that, talking with the senior folks, your chief, your senior enlisted leader is an amazing asset. He or she has been through the wickets as well, has probably as much time in as the commander. And so just circling back with those individuals to make sure you're tracking on all the right things.
And kind of tying that back to your circle of people that you have when you're going through the chaos and making decisions, going down the path. Is there any kind of criteria that you have for those type of people that you allow into that circle?
I don't know that I have criteria. I think the human dynamics largely play a part because it's some people you gravitate towards based on how they act, how they behave, how they make their decisions. And others you tend to not sort of mesh with because of the opposite reasons. So I think for me, through my tenure as junior officer and into the senior officer ranks, it's really just surrounding yourself with people that aren't like me. I don't want somebody to be a yes man, yes woman. I want somebody to understand that I need their perspective because I might be missing something. And so I think the biggest thing for me is finding people that aren't like me, so that I don't get a bunch of Thomas Segars making the same decision that I would.
Sounds very important. Is there anything that you would have changed as you kind of reflect on your career and things that you've done? Is there any decisions that you have made that you think you would have changed, and why would you have changed it?
There's been so many decisions over the years. I don't know that there's anything I would have changed, not even from my path starting out as prior enlisted. I love my enlisted time. When I first went to ALS, and then I put on staff sergeant, I was given 8 airmen to supervise, and the whole bell curve thing rang true for me. And so there was a few times where I'm standing tall in the commander's office for a particular airman or two. But those are great learning experiences for me on how to be a leader, how to take care of not only myself and my family, but somebody else and their family as well. So having that 7 years of prior enlisted and then joining the officer ranks, I wouldn't change a thing. I absolutely love the way I did that business.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for people that are trying to consider, especially going the officer path, like they're kind of at an indecisive moment, in their career, they're not too sure if staying in the military is the right route that they want to go, even if being enlisted, if they came in enlisted and kind of following the similar path that you were on?
Yeah. So, when I was younger and enlisted, I was that airman that was, standing in guard mount in the second and third ranks, out of sight from the flight chief. And it probably took me a few years until I realized that hiding in the shadows wasn't the best idea for me. I also realized in those first few years that I was in the military that you blinked and I was a staff sergeant, and I didn't really understand where all that time went. And so for me, having mentors sit down with me to say, what is it that you want out of the military? What's your end state? What are you trying to do? If you want to be a chief, these are the things that you need to do to be a chief. If you want to commission, these are the things that you need to do to commission. There's some similar baselines for both of those. You got to stay out of trouble if you want to be a chief, or if you want to commission as an officer. You have to have a degree. You know, the Air Force places a premium on educated workforce, and so having a degree is important. But just understanding that, you know, our time on this earth is very short, and the time in the military is but a sliver of that time. And so mapping out what it is that you're trying to do, you know, your short-term gains, your 3 to 5 years, your 5 to 7, your 10 to 15, your 15 to 20, what does that look like? And having the conversations with mentors and friends and people that you trust to say, this is what I want to do. Is this achievable?
Is that some, like, even if people are perfectly happy with the way their path that they're on, the way that they're going, and everything, the events that happen in life, do you still find it important to ensure that they set the goals? And
I think it is. I think, you know, in an Air Force environment where we're just a large organization, it's easy to just float like a butterfly and do your time in the military, and that's okay. The military needs employees who are okay with that. But I think, and it's more of a careerist philosophy, that driving your train and kind of setting your milestones and your goals for your professional and your personal development has been very rewarding for me. And you know, through that journey, having a discussion with my wife to say, this is what I'm thinking, are you on board, can we do this, because we're a team. That's been very important.
And since you brought up your wife, family, you know, how hard has it been for you to balance family life versus the chaos of the military?
It's tough. You know, as a commander, you're often getting the late night phone calls, the late night emails, and you just you're always engaged because you have so much. It's a responsibility, so you have so much riding on your shoulders that oftentimes, and I'm not the best at it. There's times when I'll be at a family dinner, you know, downtown at a restaurant and doing some texts or doing some emails. So finding the right balance is something that we should all reach for, but certainly getting it and achieving that is tough.
I appreciate that insight. So as we wrap this up, the time, and again, I greatly appreciate everything that you have offered as far as advice. And is there anything that you would like, any final closing comments, any kind of lessons learned, or anything that you want to pass on that you would feel important for other people that are starting their careers out, or mid-level careers, or even finishing up their careers in the Air Force and looking beyond?
Absolutely. So when I was a staff sergeant, I sat down with my boss at the time, senior master sergeant, and he gave me some sage advice, and he said, no one cares more about your career than you do. And I was like, He's like, no one cares more about your career than you do. Not me, not the commander, no one. And so I think that really set me off in the right direction to kind of figure out, again, life is short. Your time in the military is but a sliver of that. How do I set my goals? How do I set my sights on those goals and achieve those goals? And then how do I leverage the Air Force, my supervisors, my commanders, my shirts, my chiefs, my senior enlisted leaders to help me get to where I want to be? So I would definitely leave Airmen with, no one cares more about your career than you do. And the other piece of advice that I got at an early age, probably prior to Airman Leadership School, was be engaged. Just be engaged. And it took me a little bit to really understand, what does it mean to be engaged? Like, you know, does it mean like just talking with somebody all the time? And that's not how I took it. What I take it is, you know, as an NCO, when I was going into the NCO ranks, is I need to be sort of omnipresent, right, and not walk past problems. If I saw an airman whose hair was at a regs, you know, I would be addressing that as a young staff sergeant at the time. If I'm walking around and I see something wrong in the parking lot, then I would address that. So just being engaged. But over the years, I've also learned that it means kind of just give a shit about people, right? Look them in the eye, not the walking in the hallway. How you doing? Good. No, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you out? Is family okay? Is work okay? Stress okay? Those kinds of things. So being engaged on multiple levels, on the professional and the personal side, it's just great advice that I've taken to heart.
Greatly appreciate it, sir. Well, as we wrap things up, once again, thank you again for your time. Thank you for your support for the WADG. It's been really helpful and help us give us a little accountability to make sure that we're continuing to push forward, and recuperating from our little pause that we had previously. So thanks again for your time,
Absolutely.
sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.